Before we get to today's voicemail segment, I want to get to a couple of clips of Mike Pillow, as I refer to him, or MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell. The latest conspiracy theory from Mike Lindell, it's idiotic. It's really a doozy. But it's an opportunity to remind people that some much repeated talking points have long been debunked about the 2020 election. We're going to look, starting with this first clip. We have a couple of different clips to look at. In this first clip, Mike Pillow says that an 850-year-old person voted in the 2020 election, as well as 2,000 people who were 200 years of age or older. This is dumb for a few reasons, some of which are obvious, some of which are less obvious. Let's take a listen.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give an example today, and I'm not going to say what state. We put from the voter rolls to one of our team. We have a team that goes through all of it now with this other system that pulls up all anomalies. What I mean by that is 5 people voting from the same address, or 5 of the same names. I'll give an example today. 2,650 people over the age of 100. Now you might say, well, wow, that could be. 2,000 of them were over 200. Wouldn't you like to live in that state? Right. They were
okay. Well, tell us what state it is, Mike.
200 and some years old. So obviously one guy was 800.
They were 200 years old. These people that are voting are 200 years old. Of course, they're obviously not living.
They're obviously deceased, but one guy was 850 years old. Okay. And these are facts. You can get them from your own state's thing. Now you have remember you have non-residents and vote,
right.
But basically it pulls out all these deviations, anomalies, and they're stacked up like cordwood. And then we have the canvassing. So then we back it up. So let's say you have an address like we did, like in Wisconsin. Remember, where it was 23,000 people.
Yeah,
okay?
Wisconsin. Imagine having to be the co-host or whatever and playing along with this stuff. It would be great to know the name of the supposedly 850-year-old person and the state in which they supposedly voted. But sadly, Mike Pillow doesn't give us that information. Now, why does this not make sense? So, of course, it would be fraud. He's not saying there was really an 850-year-old person who voted. He's saying someone who would be 850 years old today is registered as having voted, even though we're not aware of people living to 850 years old, so clearly it's fraud. I hate to add some facts here, but when an 850-year-old person would have been alive, the United States didn't exist. There were no elections. So how would you register to vote? How did the supposedly 850-year-old person ever register to vote such that they would even have been on voter rolls to begin with when the United States didn't exist when they were still alive? It doesn't make any sense. It's pre-Columbian. Incredible. The next clip is, and he was starting to say this when we paused. In the next clip, Mike Pillow says that 23,000 dead people voted with a specific prison. All 23,000 used the same prison address to vote.
I can read. Logan, if you can pull up, I'm going to show you guys in Wisconsin, just an example how 23,000 people, General, voted using a prison address and used the same phone number. Now, those people, and a lot of them were people we turned out as we dove into it. They're not alive anymore. They just used their names, obviously.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they don't live in Wisconsin.
Yeah. So what's the opportunity here? The opportunity is to do a real review of the whole dead people voting thing. This was extensively looked at. We talked about it in the aftermath of the election. Michigan was one place where there were claims, dead voters, all these 10,000 dead people voted. Now, I encourage you to check out the BBC article, U.S. Election 2020, the dead voters in Michigan who are still alive. The BBC started with the 10,000 names posted to Twitter, supposedly dead people who voted. And they started investigating some of those. And what they found was that this was essentially a combination of people who were just still alive. The BBC picked 31 of the people. 31. And they did 30 names and then added the oldest person on the list. Of the 31 names, people supposedly dead, BBC spoke to 11 or to a family member who said, no, I'm still alive. They are still alive. For 17 others, there simply was no record of their death at all. And they found evidence that they were alive after the alleged date of death. 3 people on the list were dead, and they looked at those later. I believe they died after casting their absentee ballot. And then in some cases, it was a question of like junior, senior confusion. So this has been widely debunked, and it resurfaces in different forms. Now it's the names of 23,000 dead people were registered as being at a prison and then voted from there. Why would anyone do that? If you're looking to vote in the names of 23,000 dead people, why would you say all of their addresses are a prison? That would call attention to what you're doing. You have to believe that the people who, quote, stole the election are both incredible criminal geniuses in order to pull it off, but at the same time dumb enough to register 23,000 dead voters at the same address. Just none of it makes sense. And MyPillow won't stop. And unfortunately, it's going to be with us for a while. One of our sponsors is Magic Spoon breakfast cereal, sweet and tasty like the cereals I loved as a kid, but without the sugar or the carbs. Every serving of Magic Spoon has 0 grams of sugar, only 4 net carbs, 140 calories, and packed with 13 grams of protein. Perfect if you're doing keto, perfect if you're doing low carb, great if you're just trying to reduce your excess sugar intake, and because it's packed with protein, it's great before or after a workout. Magic Spoon flavors include cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, and cinnamon. They're bringing back cookies and cream. They're bringing back maple waffle. You can build your own variety box and try them all. Magic Spoon is so confident in the product, if you don't love it as much as I do, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Go to magicspoon.com/Pacman. The link is underneath this video, and you'll get $5 off when you use the promo code Pacman at checkout.